All right, I'm seeing it settle down here. So I'm going to get started. The first couple of slides are pretty low key. So if people are joining in, they'll still be able to be here for the bulk of the presentation. But thank you for all of you who are joining us today. I'm sure it's busy season as people are starting to get ready for the next class. And that's what we're here to talk about today. It's already time to start thinking about building the class of 2025 and all the things that come with it. So really excited to walk you through this today. And just want to introduce myself. I'm Mel Greiner. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Campus ESP. And I'm going to get you guys all set for your discusussion today. Tyler, if you want to just push me through the next slide here, I can get some of this housekeeping taken care of for you. Just some logistics on how the webinars are run here. We do use Zoom webinar. That means that we cannot see you and we cannot hear you. It makes us very sad. But, and this is the Zoom, we're seeing Zoom now. I don't know what just happened here. There we go. Zoom is, here's another problem I have with Zoom. Not only can we not see or hear you, but it suddenly just launches settings on Tyler unsolicited. But so basically what I'm saying there is that if you do have a question at any point, we are not going to hear you if you just say it out loud. There is a Q&A feature built into the webinar at the bottom of your screen. If you hover, it will show up. Please use that to ask any questions that you have during the webinar. We will be keeping an eye on it. We will address them as we can. And if we don't get to them during the conversation, we will have time at the end for those questions. And yes, this is being recorded, so we will send that to you tomorrow and you can share it with all of your friends. Go ahead, Tyler. And then for those of you who maybe just are not familiar with Campus ESP, you found us somehow because you were able to register for this. But if you're not a customer, we are super lucky to have over 400 customers that we work with coast to coast right now. And we're serving actually close to 10 million families throughout those schools portals, which is a pretty amazing honor and super exciting for us to be doing. You want to hit the next one here? And then just so you know really who we are and how we're helping these institutions, we are a complete parent engagement strategy. That means that you have a platform as well as human beings behind it here at Campus ESP. Our portal experience is kind of the centerpiece of Campus ESP, but it also has emails, text messaging. You can run event registration and check-in. We have e-commerce flexibility. We also, like I said, have these experts like Tyler, who you're going to meet in a minute. They are helping you every step of the way and making sure that you are being successful in your system and also helping you point to these analytics. We have a very rich back end of the system that gives you a lot of information on what is working, how your parents and family members are engaging, and helps you continue to hone that strategy so you're always leaning forward into better results for you and your team. And if you get at the end of this webinar and you're like, okay, this is really interesting, I think I need to learn a little bit more, our website is obviously the best place to do that, campusesp.com. When you get there, there's tons of information, but the blog and resources area is probably going to be the most helpful. There's tons of case studies, research studies, examples from different schools of all different shapes and sizes that could be really helpful. So we highly encourage you to head over there and learn a little bit more. And with that, let's actually talk about our topic for the day and the people who are joining me. So I want to introduce everybody who's on our panel today and let them have a chance to kind of just talk a little bit about their role and their school. We're going to start with Sarah. Sarah Lindberg is the Director of First Year Admission at University of Mary Washington. Sarah, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here. As Melissa said, I am Sarah Lindberg, the Director of First Year Admission at the University of Mary Washington. We are a smaller, about just under 4,000 student public liberal arts college in Fredericksburg, Virginia, about halfway between DC and Richmond for those that aren't familiar with the Virginia landscape. I'm going into my 17th year of recruitment, which makes me sound really old, but I am excited to be here and share a little bit more. We've been Campus ESP partners since 2021.
Amazing. Thanks, Sarah. And also joining us today is Bridget Nohara. She's the Admissions Communication Manager at Franciscan University of Steubenville. Bridget, you want to say hello to everybody?
Yes, thank you, Melissa. Like Sarah, I'm so happy to be here today. I love Campus ESP and I'm really excited to just talk with you guys. As Sarah said, I'm the communications manager with our admissions department. So I do all of our parent communication. I also do a lot of our email flow and strategy within that, writing it, sending it out, all of that. I wear many hats, but those are kind of the two main gigs that I have here. Franciscan University is in Steubenville, Ohio, which is nestled in the Ohio Valley, right in that tri-state area where Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia all come together. We have about 2,800 full-time enrolled undergraduate students. We also have grad and online programs, and that's kind of the gist of Franciscan.
Great, thanks, Bridget. And kind of moderating our discussion for the rest of the webinar here is my esteemed colleague, Tyler Evans-Tuckey. He is on our account management team and is responsible really for the success of our customers who are focused on student enrollment outcomes. So Tyler, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, thanks, Mel. Really excited to be here with Sarah and Bridget today. My background before Campus CSP was 6.5 years in admissions, most of that time as a regional recruiter up in New England. Now live down in West Virginia and work with a handful of our partners, really focused on that student enrollment utilization from both the parent side and the institutional side. I've been at Campus CSP for getting close to my 2-year, which is big anniversary at Campus CSP. And looking forward to sharing more with you all who are joining, anyone who's watching, but then definitely sharing space with Sarah and Bridget today.
Awesome. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tyler because he is truly the expert here. I'm going to go off camera and you guys can start having an amazing conversation about how we're going to get through this next recruitment season.
Thanks, Mel. No pressure. We'll take it from here. But want to just start with a quick poll to everyone who's joining us today and check in on you. I know that there's been a lot of check-ins. Y'all, I can't imagine the year that you've had. I'm still connected to a lot of my admission colleagues, both in my home, but then also just through the professional organizations that I was a part of. So wanted to say, we know that this last year has been a little rough, and I think a little rough is probably putting it pretty nicely, and are ready to shift gears, ready to turn the tide, change the conversation, start to think about this class of 2025. I know one of my favorite things was giving each class kind of a term or a feeling, and some were needier than others, some were more aggressive than others, and who knows what's in store for 2025. So as you all are looking at this poll, what are those top challenges? Just Bridget, Sarah, how are you doing? Are you ready to look for some happy things to come? I know there's a lot happening in the broader education landscape, but how are you as of July 11th, 2024?
I'm feeling pretty good. We've hit a point where we can start to reset a little bit for next year, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about. June orientations are done. We're still getting those financial aid calls. I actually tried just to do the poll, and because I'm a panelist, it won't let me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to less financial aid phone calls next year, and being able to grow our applicant pools.
Yeah, also feeling great, pumped to bring our new class in this fall, and really excited to just be thinking about 2025. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary with Campus ESP, so it's been cool to collect some of the data from the past year and really looking forward to implementing it going forward, seeing what worked, what didn't work. But overall, feeling great, hoping for a good year.
Love that. Mel, if you shut down our poll, and we'll see, do a quick pulse check how everyone else is doing. I don't know. We're learning Zoom today. Will Zoom tell us? Will Mel tell us? We'll follow up with everyone when we get results of
I can see it. Can you guys not see it?
No.
Oh, what a weird tool. All right, well,
Yeah.
I'll give you the quick highlights is that the overwhelming result is higher yield. About 80% of respondents are looking for some higher yield based on their family communications. The close runners up, I would say, are more applicants and less summer melt. So definitely trying to hit those maybe 3 core metrics I think that most enrollment teams are focused on. And just bring more people into the university, get them through that process, and get them to campus in the fall.
For sure. Some common themes there, and hopefully we can navigate some solutions to those problems in the rest of our time. We're also going to be sharing a content planning worksheet with everyone today. So if you will drop some links in the chat, we'll get this to everyone. So if you want to take notes, this is kind of a framework for planning what you need to send specifically to parents. We know that a lot of the themes and communication tracks are student specific, but really starting to believe in the power of parents as partners. We'll share our content planning worksheet with you all. So if you want to take notes today, and you get extra credit because we're under development, we're going to talk about August, and then the rest is up to you. So this will be coming to you shortly. like definitely gonna turn things back over to Sarah and Bridget, do an intro about the institutions. From our lens here at Campus CSP, I think that we were really excited about providing some different voices, some different types of institutions. Hopefully you attending or watching can like see yourself in either of these institutions, give you a little bit of a pulse check how things are going on your end. But Sarah, any other parts? I know like you shared a little bit about Mary Washington at first. Anything else that you want to dive into?
Yeah, no, I could just that we absolutely love having Campus ESP as a partner and everything that we've been able to do to increase our and give our parents and supporters another platform to gain information as they're helping their students transition and help keep them accountable, the students accountable for what needs to come next in the process.
Amazing. Thank you. Same prompt over to you, Bridget. Any additional information that you want to share about Franciscan?
This does a good job of sharing about us.
Great.
Yeah, you nailed it, Tyler. You really did. And I would just say very similar, echoing Sarah, that we have seen a lot of growth through our parent communications with Franciscan. I can get into a little bit of the numbers later, but it's just been really cool to see when you harness that parents as partners, what a difference it makes and just how much growth comes from that.
Absolutely. I think that that's kind of what brings us together today, to quote a great movie. It's not marriage, it's parent communication. And so really shifting into what we're going to talk about today, kind of setting a benchmark, then we're going to go through 5 tips, look at details, data, and recommendations behind each one of these. But I think that what we've seen the most at Campus CSP from the macro level is that parent communication is an expectation. So parents are expecting you all to be communicating with them during the admissions process, all the way through the time that their student chooses an institution and graduates. That yellow bar is looking at the prospective, yellow-orange bar looking at prospective families here. So we see that 81% of prospective families last year are asking for weekly communication. That's a major lift. I think that everyone would be like, wow, that's a lot of info. But parents are really in tune to what's going on during the admissions process and are hoping and wanting you all to continue to share what's the latest for their student. This process is so personal. I think that was like one of my favorite parts about being an admission counselor is just like the human element to all of it. And parents have that emotional connection to their kid. I also like to add an asterisk. I'm going to say parents a lot today, and really at Campus CSP, and today we mean that very broadly. So our default's going to say parents in a lot of things. That can be a supporter, a grandparent, a stepmother, anyone falls into that broad parent category. So that's kind of like where folks are. And I'm going to get some first intro of like what you all, Sarah and Bridget, look to in your communications. But Mel's going to launch our second and final poll so that we're not testing too much technology today. Just about a self-reflection. How often is your office communicating with parents and families? Sarah, Bridget, I know like you all at least are doing every other week through your Campus CSP subscription, but kind of like how are you thinking about talking to parents at either Mary Washington or Franciscan?
Yeah, I think for Mary Washington, we really think about the different pieces and parts that are happening through the admissions process. And when those pivotal times are coming up are great times to talk with families, right? Events like open houses, destination events, or admitted student day events, when application filing dates are upon us, when for this year when FAFSA didn't open, and then when it did open, and then when we were getting data and we weren't getting data, right? So those kind of pivotal points in the college search process where parents should be at least having that check-in with their student is really when we often try to communicate with them. But we have content regularly going up based on interests and things within their portal.
Absolutely.
I would say for us at Franciscan, I do try to make an effort to touch base with our parents almost weekly. Of course, every now and then, either there's just not solid content to send them, and so I think, okay, we'll take an off week, or things get crazy. But similar to Sarah, definitely trying to keep parents up to date on any sort of upcoming deadline or information that's pertinent to the time. But another thing that I really try to focus on is Franciscan University is a very niche school in that we're very devoutly religious. And so I really try to make an effort to communicate our campus culture to our parents, because that's a big thing that a lot of parents really value. And that's a lot of the time why they're sending their kids to our school. So I would say there's quite a almost half and half split for us between communicating our culture and then also those really just kind of specific details about processes and deadlines and dates and that sort of thing, but keeping that conversation with our parents so that they're always assured this is what they think it is.
Absolutely. I think that that's great. And spoiler alert, we're going to see examples of like what parents are hoping you all share and then how you have done that so far. So Mel, we can see the results here, not very often, monthly. It's a pretty good split of thirds. So weekly, monthly, not very often, split in thirds, monthly being the number one. It's definitely a great starting point. And if you notice, the content worksheet is on that monthly cadence. So if you're just getting started today, hopefully you can fill out that semester, the one that's coming up. Also, Sarah, you talked about FAFSA. We're not going to ignore FAFSA. We're going to look at financial aid, support your friends in the financial aid office and their professional organization, call your Congress people, demand an October 1st start date is the latest. So we'll look at financial aid planning across the board. But shifting into our top 5. So our half David Letterman section here of tips and then best practices. First one that we have for everyone who's kind of getting their feet wet in parent communications is really personalizing the communications, because that's what families are expecting. We study parents every year. We ask them kind of what are your preferred channels, and continue to find that email is the number one platform that parents are expecting and hoping that colleges and universities use when they're communicating with them. We see a family portal in second place, also segmented out by some socioeconomic and racial markers in that family portal that differ pretty strongly than those in the next largest group who's asking for text messages. So a wide variety of parents are hoping to engage with the institution in a wide variety of ways. And that, I think, helps you start to tailor what message is the right place, and then how can I continue to personalize what I'm sending to families. We see that now is really the time to start planning, and we're going to look at some examples next, but looking at the data, now is the time to plan because families are coming. Families are going to be knocking soon. That application, if not open already, will be open soon. And that expectation is going to continue to grow. This past year, when we looked at all of our institutions in the Campus CSP platform, thanks Mel for highlighting those 400 different schools, we saw that the prospective families really have the most activity in October. This is not meant to get you too excited, not meant to create too much anxiety here, but really meant to showcase what families' behavior looks like throughout the year, and planning now for the peak of applications starts to accomplish those goals that we hit on in your challenges, right? You all are looking for more apps, more yield, less melt, and that starts in October. So we're going to look at school by school examples next of making personalized communications here. So starting with you and Franciscan, Bridget, kind of how do you think about personalization? What are some of those demographics that you segment? And what is a general philosophy to get going, especially knowing that folks are excited early in the admissions process?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, this might sound so dumb to a lot of people, but this was one of those things that I kind of had to learn. Is I initially thought personalization meant mail merge, putting the name in multiple times, making it personal. And the more I kind of dove in, the more I realized, okay, that's a part of it, but that is this much of it. And really it's knowing who you're talking to. So like I mentioned previously, our school is very religious. And so knowing how to personalize to that type of thing, speaking to these kind of items that I know that our parents really care about, even outside of university. Part of that was this question and answer that's up on the screen right now. We did this panel with these two parents who actually, they're both alumni of Franciscan. They have current students, but within our network, they're kind of well-known podcasters. So it was a really cool event, and it drew a lot of attention because people recognized them from outside of Franciscan, and they were able to ask their questions to parents who get the Franciscan culture, but who also have the ache of sending their kids far away from home. And they're doing all of this as first-time college parents. So it was just a really cool event, had a lot of really positive feedback, definitely something I think we'll do going forward. And I think it could be applied to really any institution. You could find those parents. They don't have to be notable alumni. They could just be parents who are good on screen and willing to answer a few questions. But that was a really fun event.
The other piece that like I picked up on what you were saying, Bridget, and I know that you're a proud alumni too, is like your alumni know the institution so well. And so tapping into the folks who, yes, in this case, like are prolific in the Franciscan community, but also those who like, will speak to the values that you're trying to communicate externally. One of my takeaways is like, how can I tap into alumni more and share that, especially if those alumni happen to have kids who are looking at the school.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Sarah, you are up next. Similar set of questions, kind of when you're thinking about getting started and making sure that families get the right information at the right time, how do you ensure that level of a personalized outreach?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we want to make sure is that our families feel included and part of the UMW community as well, and that they can reach out to us throughout their students' experience with the university. And so, of course, we're always talking with the students. But one thing that we know from everything that happened with COVID is that parents want to stay informed too, right? The K-12 system set up an expectation of daily updates as to what was going on, and we saw that need. And so we also know that our parents want the best and the smoothest transition for their students. So like you'll see in the example below, like don't let your student fall behind. Like let's make sure we're at one of those pivotal steps. Check in with them, sit down. Have they done X, Y, and Z? It's time to kind of keep the needle moving so that they can have a good, smooth transition for when they move to campus in August.
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot that happens right at that start of the cycle, and making sure that families know what deadlines are, what they mean. I think one of the takeaways I have is like trying to cut back on institutional short names and really spelling things out for parents and families so that they can follow along the path with their student. The other one that I like kind of, if I'm thinking about examples that I'd like to see more of as an account manager at Campus ESP, it's sharing what happens after that application is submitted. I think that parents have the most questions about that, especially like, when will I hear back? Who is looking at it? Is this being reviewed by artificial intelligence? And all of those questions, I think, would make for a really strong parent communication piece. Anything to add there, or let's look at tip number 2.
Let's go to tip 2.
Tip number 2. All right. This one probably will have the most feels from the crowd, but make financial aid and scholarship information available in all of the places, all of the times, all of the information, just everything. I call this our Everything Everywhere All at Once section, because families are really wanting to know the most about financial aid. One of the partners who I work with talks about how personalized the admissions process is, and that you're asking parents for some of their most prized, we'll call them possessions for the sake of argument here, but their financial investment and their children. Those are the most held on to from the lens of a parent. And when we ask, like, what are the things that you want to hear about, we see that 4 of the top 10 topics include financial aid. Cost, how do I pay? What does financing look like? This is crucial information, I think, really for all demographics, right? So we know that there's going to be different sectors of the institution who engage with this differently. First-gen families may want to know more about like the blue boxes here, understanding the different types of financial aid and scholarships and loans. What do those mean as far as repayment versus someone who's that alumni family who is looking more at like, what does paying my tuition bill look like, who's more familiar with the institution. So a lot of ways to really like start to segment your communications, but families are wanting to know the most. And in years when you know what's happening, this is an easy one. In years when you don't know what's happening because it's out of your hands, it becomes a little bit more of a challenge. We share constant best practices with you all. Hopefully, Sarah and Bridget, you appreciate some of our partnerships with the Department of Ed and really sharing out as soon as new updates are made. But not a shock, not a surprise, kind of a wow moment is how much financial aid and FAFSA information was engaged with this past year. So we shared out FAFSA info as soon as it was made available to us across all of our platforms. And you can see on this chart kind of the skyrocket of activity. So knowing that that was the most kind of engaged with post last year, I think sets up that the expectations are continuing to grow. Families are going to want to know more about this. And you both really shared a lot of proactive information with your families. So Sarah, starting with you this time, kind of like if you can walk through your approach for financial aid communication, where you put that, what were some of the most important pieces to share specifically with the parent audiences?
Yeah, I think this year, especially, we wanted to make sure that if, the student wasn't sharing an email or they weren't engaged, or parents weren't with their student on a visit or engaged with us on social media in different ways, that we were promoting the financial aid updates and things like that, and in every platform and way possible. So we took the event, the approach of not only emails, but also advertisements and posts and announcements in Campus ESP to keep parents up to date with that information. The ad that you see there, once the FAFSA form was available, we were looking at our data and did hear from various sources that the number of FAFSA filers is down. The state of Virginia is saying, it's down this percentage point. And so we knew that that would impact how many students were filing a FAFSA with us. And so we put up that ad. We need to remind people, this is now available to you. Go ahead and make sure you do this. Don't forget. Yes, it may be more difficult this year, but it is still an important piece of that admissions puzzle to get your information in so that we can create a need-based award package for students. And then the other one that you see down there, we did extend our filing, our deposit deadline this year due to the delays with FAFSA. And so in addition to having it out on our website and emails to students and communicating with school counselors, we wanted to make sure parents were aware of that as well. And so we sent out an announcement to them via Campus ESP so that they knew we don't have to rush to May 1. We have until June 1st to make our decision, and hopefully we'll have our full financial aid package by then to help with that.
Totally. I think when getting started with parent communications, a lot of times a fail-safe that I fully support and believe in, endorse, is a one-size-fits-all.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of financial aid, this is like an all-size-fits-all. Like this is a do everything, blast it everywhere. Because to me, like this is one of the most important pieces that is a part of the overall kind of higher ed landscape too, is a conversation on cost and value and return on investment, and is going to college the right thing to do for my family if I'm that parent who's receiving it. So making sure that folks know what to do, how to get there, and when they need to make decisions by it is super valuable. Bridget, we're going to see, clicking on the wrong screen here, but similar approach at Franciscan. And I know you kind of went a step above in some outside scholarship sourcing. So similarly, kind of what was your approach to looking at what parents may have been wanting and hoping for and how you met those needs?
Yeah, I tried to do my best. Obviously, I'm sure we didn't do it perfectly. This year was a challenge. It was its own beast. But a couple things that I really focused on. One, actually, that outside scholarship ended up being one of my top things that I put out all year. And I think that it was big for a couple reasons. Franciscan, we don't do a ton of scholarships besides for our merit-based scholarships. So already we have a lot of students who are interested in outside scholarships, but we had never provided them, I should say, with a guide for that. And so I thought this was a good year because people didn't know what they were getting from the FAFSA. And so I just put this together, and it's one of those things that honestly, A lot of the information on there, students could have found online, but I just did the Google searching for them so that they felt like I was trying to serve them. We were trying to serve them as an institution in this time of a lot of financial uncertainty, and it gave them some direction in the meantime before they knew what they were going to be getting from FAFSA to at least go out and try to get some of their own outside scholarships. And what's cool too is this will definitely serve us in the future, even as the FAFSA gets a little more stable, hopefully. This is still going to be a resource that I'll update every year and send to our families. And then also, I would say a huge thing that I found was really well received this year was just basic bite-sized information that to us who work at the institution, it seems so obvious. But to a lot of these families, especially who are looking at tons of different colleges and they're coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, financially, socially, every single way. So I did stuff like just putting together our merit-based scholarships. Even though that's on our website, I sent them out in just a little bit so they didn't have to go through our whole website, the whole financial aid page. I just said, these are our scholarships, or these are our next steps with financial aid. And I sent those kind of staggered throughout the season so that they could digest it a little more easily and not have to just swallow it all at one time. And I found that to be very effective.
No, totally. I think like for both parent and student, kind of this like the ability to Google generation is there, but the resistance of them to just ask simple questions into a search continues. And so to be able to like highlight what you know parents and students are looking for in a branded format, I think really elevates the institutional voice of we're here to provide the resource. Instead of asking ChatGPT to send a letter of special circumstances, here's what you can ask for. Here are those guides and scholarships ready for you to go on your own. At some point, you have to go on your own. But yeah,
Can
Sarah.
I piggyback on what Bridget was saying about the
Yeah.
small bite-sized pieces? I do find that, and obviously Bridget does too, that those shorter messages, those shorter announcements, those shorter posts actually gain more traction. Every post doesn't need to be multiple pages, right? Like break it down into those simple bite-sized pieces. Like this post, like it could be about all financial aid, but no, actually, we just want to talk about merit scholarships. We just want to talk about the interview. We just want to talk about outside scholarships, because that helps them feel like they're not drinking from a fire hose.
Completely. To make this easier for you all, hopefully you appreciate this. Is not like overall, we're trying to broadcast broad pictures about like parent engagement. To make your lives easier using Campus ESP, Tuesday, like of this week, AI was introduced, and one of my favorite things is to make this more concise as a prompt for any post that we write, any post that you write. So hopefully some time saving on both of your fronts coming soon, or now in production. So look out for more as we introduce artificial intelligence into the system that we have. Broad tip number 3. So pulling out, looking at that macro lens. I promised a lot of positivity today. I will just be a realist. Like enrollment challenges are not going away. We're not going to say they're going to get harder, but they're not going anywhere, right? And really leaning into parents as influential decision makers is so powerful. Looking at who's holding the calendar, who's holding the keys, who's holding the wallet. Those are usually not the students. And so finding the ways to open the doors to parents, invite them in. One of the things that we see is that schools who have really engaged parents have higher yield rates. We saw in that first survey, kind of what are your challenges, yield being the #1 topic. What are ways to continue to grow yield naturally as an institution is opening the door to parents, letting parents in as partners through the process. I think like, I don't know, parents has been the bad P word for a long time in admissions and in higher ed. And so really starting to break down those barriers, letting folks in has resulted positively for both of your institutions. We see that with the partners that we work with, but just want to like highlight some different ways that you're being more direct with families. So Bridget, starting here with Franciscan, kind of like what are the needle moving activities that you wanted to make sure that you sent to parents and families?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see here again, featured is that virtual event that we did. And that post specifically there, or I should say, I think it was an announcement, or probably both, but that was to share the recording with our families. We also always try to run a campaign about visiting campus. As all of you know, I'm sure having visitors come to your campus is one of the most influential things. We found from a survey from our freshman students that 80% of them who came to Franciscan had gone on a campus visit. So really powerful. So we always want to make sure we're putting that in front of them and letting them know what a visit day includes and why it's valuable. And then we also launched this year, being able to schedule a call with your admissions counselor for people who aren't able to come to a campus visit, but also I find a lot of families are kind of nervous before their visit, or they have more questions after their visit. And so we did that to kind of let people know, hey, we're here. And this is just one of those little kind of asides, but I've noticed that when I put our team's photos on things, it makes a really big difference. That is another way I would say personalization comes through, just to kind of follow up on that. I find that when I send posts, ads, campaigns, whatever it may be, and I have people's pictures on it, it always does better. So just a little nugget to tuck away.
Yeah, tying back into our first tip of personalization, right? I think like my default thought is, how do I personalize this to the parent or their student? Not necessarily how do I personalize us as an institution. And so I think that that's a really great tip, Bridget, and just making sure that like the influence of the human element on admissions continues to me to be the most powerful, and putting that out there for families is a great like resource for that. Sarah, I know you, like, I saw you ready to jump in and have some examples for you to expand upon as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Sharing opportunities for application fee waiver codes. We do the other example that you see there too is an admitted student webinar series, making sure that as students are offered admission and are trying to make those decisions, that students and their supporters are aware of opportunities for added information that don't necessarily have them coming back to campus, right, and coming back onto campus, but can give them an opportunity to get that content either by attending one of them live or going to our YouTube channel and watching them post activity is always really important. We actually have quite a few parents and supporters that join our community early. And I think that's probably coming in a later slide. Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but so we do a lot of, free application code sharing or pushes to apply within our platform as well, because we do see parents there early and often.
I think like piggybacking off of that, kind of the feedback loop between student to parent supporter is not as like linear as it used to be. Our CEO, he went through the college search process with his 2 students this past year, and just hearing about how much they have going on a nightly basis, it's like remarkable. But the like times of a 5 o'clock nightly dinner where everyone's around a table kind of talking back and forth freely, I'm guessing is more of a thing of the past, in that students are so active. Like, it's really cool reading applications and seeing what they're up to, but finding that you still need to communicate with parents openly about where that student is in the process. You may not have the student may not be sharing freely voluntarily where things are. Have they been admitted? Who knows? Do they share that? What is the next thing for them to do? Is it they went through everything but didn't push submit? Like, that is a major thing to move families along with, and sharing that with parents, family supporters really helps kind of nudge that student forward in the process, but also kind of builds a level of trust and buy-in with the institution. Like, we're here to look out for you along the way.
Absolutely.
Moving into our 4th tip here. So quality, quantity parent communications has a direct impact on yield. We're going to look at some experiences, and Bridget, you kind of teed this one up really nicely. But again, when we ask parents and families what's super important, number 1, the on-campus visit. Not a shocker there in the decision process. Number 2 may be surprising to some of you joining us today or watching this. The quality of communication with parents and families being the second most important part of the decision for parents and families. We'll see other things about just getting information about the majors, meeting admission staff, level of personalization there, getting to know faculty, coaches, talking about any current students or parents who are at the institution, looking at info from high school counselors and how can you make sure that that information is accurate and up to date. The ones that like I was never a road runner, but number 9 at a college fair. I have great memories at college fairs. Sad to see it so far on the list, but still like impactful, right? Like families are still saying this had an impact. And you can our CEO went to the Philly NACAC and really was blown away by the level of information that admission counselors hold on their day-to-day. So has a major impact. And then virtual visits, I think like we're just seeing overall kind of virtual engagement in that 10th spot. So going to turn things over to both schools, have 2 examples of like how do you keep people involved. And we're gonna look at this one first and then pull in Franciscan. But Sarah, you talked a little bit about getting folks to in early and making sure that families have the right information. And this one of those examples that you have here. Kind of what are the ways that you're thinking about opening the door, inviting parents into the process?
Yeah, and Bridget, she nicely teed it off with that visit experience, but we also find similar data with our admitted and enrolling students that the campus visit experience is one of those number 1 determining factors, and that a high percentage of our enrolling students have also been to campus, right? So we want to make sure that we are promoting that campus visit as early and often. So the one that you see in the center there, that is teed up pretty regularly as a campaign, like an ad campaign within our platform. And then the one to the left, we actually have segmented out of our populations of students that actually, we call them, they abandoned their application, right? So they've started it, but they haven't finished it. We have those parents and supporters kind of sectioned off into another like grouping, right? So that we can continue to encourage the families and say, oh, it's like you started it, but you stopped and your students stopped. So they're in this place where we need additional information from them. Again, trying to get them to help nudge their student along within the process.
Absolutely. I think that that's a like great way to get families into the process and follow along with that student. And then Bridget, I saw this really cool way of you just making sure that families feel a part of the not onboarding experience, but the coming to the institution. So similar question, kind of what are the main things that you're looking for when you open the door to parents and families, and kind of what went through making sure that they're up to date with some of the more dates, deadlines, and next steps?
Yeah, similar to what I said before, just trying to be really conscientious about bite-sized bits, because the more and more I talk to parents, the more I realize, frankly, most of them have no idea what's going on, or at least think they don't know what's going on. And so I find that when I give them these basic checklists and short to-do lists, it can either inform them or it can kind of make them feel a little more like, okay, I do know what I'm doing. Thank you. And it affirms them. So trying to inform and affirm essentially are kind of my 2 main things that I'm working on. And just the frequency of communication, really trying to keep the door open so that they know how to reach out to us. Because I find that the more I reach out to them, the more comfortable they are reaching back out to me. Partly, I think just because they know how, because they're like, oh, I can respond to an email that's already in my inbox. And it's that relationship building throughout the months that we're working together, that just kind of establishing that line of communication very clearly so they know exactly how. Those are sort of my methods.
Absolutely. No, I like the inform and affirm I wrote down. If you get a pen note from me, then that's a top tip. So added that one to the notebook, and I think that that's a great lens to really think about like parent specific communication. Our last tip of the day, formal tip, I'm sure that there'll be many others that come up, is that you don't have to do this alone. I know that this is, for some of you who are getting started, can feel daunting. You're like, oh my gosh, we just figured out what is the right communication track for our students. How do we start that with parents? And Sarah and Bridget, you've both been doing this for different amounts of time, right? Like Sarah, you've been up and running with parent communications for longer and have had more time to kind of build support on the ground of Mary Washington. And so we'll look at some examples there. And Bridget, parent communication still, like, you're in that first year, right? So you're looking at what worked, what didn't, how can we continue to tweak it? And I think it's really helpful to know, like, that the institution is the one who is meeting with these parents and families. It is introducing the whole school to parents and families, and they have questions for different departments. I think, like, Bridget, that was one of your last comments, is like that they're feeling more comfortable reaching out and asking questions, which is great. And our hope is that they're getting to the right team to answer it, whether that is an admission counselor, whether that is a separate financial aid office. I worked for public and private and institutions, and was able to send some parents to other places and took many more phone calls than in other institutions. And finding the ways that you're making sure that the communication is answering the questions the parents have, I think, is really powerful. So just some top tips here to collaborate across the institution, meet regularly. One of the things that I hear from our partners is that when they say, hey, I have a tool that reaches out to parents, family supporters, that other campus departments actually get really excited about it, if not a little jealous. There's definitely like some growing momentum in different areas that are like, wow, I wish that I could reach out to parents and families. And the schools I work with say, great, here you go. Let's set you up to make sure that you can get this information out, or send it to me and I can make sure that it gets out to our incoming families. I think, like, collaboration in events is really powerful. Having those in-person kind of visit experiences that set and introduce the whole campus, the different teams up, is really great. And then integrating communications, asking people, what do they need to know more about? How can you make sure that the calendar is up to date with like, what's the right thing to do for the admissions office versus what's the right thing to do for the institution? And is there a vaccination form that has to be submitted on a certain date to the student health services, but still impacts your MELT numbers, right? Like, if they don't do their vaccination form, move-in day is going to be a challenge for them. So finding those ways that you can collaborate across campus are really powerful, and have some examples here, starting with Franciscan. So I know, like, you've already walked through the outside scholarship guide, and that was, like, really, I'm sure that your colleagues in financial aid really appreciated that effort. I have another example here about kind of a packing list for housing. But Bridget, when you're thinking about expanding the reach of your platform, expanding how you're engaging parents as an institutional lens, just curious, like, how have you found other departments? Have they been receptive to you? And what goes through when you're sharing that out with your audience?
Yeah, definitely. It's actually been really cool using Campus ESP, because I don't know if any of you watching experience this at your institutions, but for better or for worse, I can find ours to be a bit siloed sometimes. And it's hard to sometimes collaborate, not even because people aren't willing, but just because it's not on people's radar. And Campus ESP has been this really cool tool for me to be able to reach out, and what you were saying, Tyler, to be able to tell these different departments, I have this platform, and I have experienced across the board that exact reaction. They're so excited. And so what it's looked like for me is honestly just reaching out directly via email. I work remotely, so otherwise I might pop into people's offices, but I just send an email to department heads throughout the university, and I say, hey, I saw this and I'd love to share something about it. Do you have accurate links, or can you confirm these numbers? Or I'll just say, is there anything that you would like me to tell about your department, tell our students about your department? And there are some people who I've also offered to send things my way. And little by little, like Tyler mentioned, I'm still pretty new with Campus ESP, just a year in, but I'm already seeing those lines of communication improve as well, where I'm building these relationships with people on the department, or across departments, I should say, on campus, who are now sending me information. And it's just a really cool way to personalize our content as well. And that packing list was probably my second most popular post, which cracks me up because it's like telling kids to bring the most basic things in the world, but they ate it up. They were like, thank you so much. So
Don't
that's what
forget
that
paper
was.
towels. And I really appreciate, like, how you framed it in like, I don't know. I was in admissions, and so sometimes I think every department has a overinflated like belief in themselves, and to be able to nicely say that you're finding a lot of excitement across campus, that you're like realizing that people are growing to be excited, and that there is a sense of collaboration in your communication outreach to them is a really nice touch. So thank you. Sarah, have 3 examples. We have some animations here just to highlight a few different ones, but starting with like, I guess my question to you is what are the departments that you're finding great to work with, that families want to hear more about, and kind of how have you built that into your strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So going to like the meeting regularly, we've really tried very hard to break down some of those silos that Bridget was mentioning. And so I actually meet bi-weekly with our Dean of Residence Life, our Dean of Students, our Director of Academic Services, our registrar, along with the person that oversees transfer with first year and admissions, as well as new student programs. So when they heard about us signing on with Campus CSP, they too were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is wonderful. And from those conversations, we went on with a continuing student portal, our parent family portal, because we wanted to make sure that we were completing the entire life cycle for parents as part of that. Marketing does help us quite a bit with our content as well. And you don't have to invent the wheel for everything. And I think that's one of the biggest things that, as the person that became primarily responsible for building a lot of the content and things, is like, I didn't need to be building new, right? I was able to reuse things. So like Bridget mentioned the packing list. Like I probably have, and I'll probably do it again this year. We had a packing list last year, but it's something I just pulled directly off the Residence Life website, confirmed with them that it was up to date because, regulations changed. And then I went ahead and shared it. But we also went ahead and we do similar things for health services and making sure health forms are coming in, and we confirm content based on their timeline. And hey, look at that. So we confirm content with them and have their eyes on it, and then we're publishing it for them. But it is something that can develop based on news releases from the university too, to highlight different programs and events and different students and return on investment, and highlighting alumni and things like that as well.
News release pulled up. I do have one other of some dining info, but I think like both of you really highlighted some really great ways to like work across those institutional boundaries to find those different pieces of information that are relevant for families at different stages, right? Like you may have some folks who recently deposited who still need some information on housing, and a lot of people need to know about what to do for move-in, and all of those different teams are working together for the same goal and finding the ways to get the information out there. Parents are one of the best ways to do so. So appreciate both of you. We're gonna leave 5 minutes for questions. Mel, I don't see any. If you have any, absolutely. Otherwise, we can look at some closing tips or tricks here. Anything else that Bridget or Sarah, you want me to write down? Or anything that after talking for 55 minutes, you're like, this is one of my bigger takeaways?
I just love this picture. We can't see you.
We do have one question that just came through. It says, I'm always curious about how the panelists and attendees, in I guess particular, chose the school that you attended. What were the reasons that you chose back in the day to choose your own college? And I think I would add to this, and how does that influence how you do your job today?
Wow. This is a real question for an admission counselor. Like, no.
Yeah, I'll jump right in.
Great.
I think Bridget mentioned it, or you mentioned it for Bridget, that she's a graduate of Franciscan. I'm actually a graduate of Mary Washington as well. For me, and my college search process, one of the big factors that was important for me was athletics. I was a varsity athlete when I was a student, but I also knew that I needed a smaller atmosphere, smaller class sizes, being able to ask questions in the classroom. I knew that I wouldn't thrive at a larger institution, which is how I came upon Mary Washington, and the bonus of being able to also swim. And at the time, I wanted to be a teacher, and that's what we were established as, was a teacher's college. So we have very notable education programs. Mary Washington has always been home to me. I had a great experience as a student, which is why I worked here when I initially graduated and then came back after finishing my master's degree almost 11 years ago. And so being an alum, I think, says most about why I work at the institution. I believe in our mission. I believe in the students that we help produce and support and educate here and their goals, and like to see where they land in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, Franciscan University has a really strong religious affiliation and a strong spiritual presence on campus. And that was definitely my number one reason for wanting to attend. And it's my number one reason that I still love working there, is because there's a lot of personal alignment with the university, with our mission, with our values. Also on campus, in addition to really stellar academics and quite renowned professors within our sphere, there's also a lot of opportunity for service work and missionary kind of outreach. We send students on mission trips over our spring break, and there's just all sorts of that type of thing. And then also our campus community is very tight-knit. And that was something that really spoke to me as soon as I visited for the first time. I saw there's just something different here about the way the students really communicate with each other, the way that they support each other and are present to each other, that it genuinely felt like home. So all of those reasons I still see to this day. And when I talk to students, that's what I hear from them. And like prospective students as well, is those are all the things that are really speaking to them and bringing them to Franciscan, which is why I really do my best to communicate all of that to our prospective families so they know that's what's going down.
I love both of those answers so much. Thankfully for everyone, we're wrapping things up. I have an answer and a story that probably is not best to be recorded, so we can skip that. Bridget, one closing tactical question for you, then a couple other resources and next steps for everyone tuned in today. But someone ask, when did you send the outside scholarship guide? Did you do that early in the cycle, later, or in both times?
I did it both times. And I've also posted periodically. I do weekly Q&A series on our Franciscan Instagram, and I get a lot of questions from students about scholarships. And so I'll just link the PDF. I made it like a public PDF file that I can link. So I just kind of plug it in here and there, and I've resent it to parents. I really just send it over and over because people also lose things all the time or forget that they got it, or it gets buried. So there wasn't really any real strategy with that. I just throw it out into the universe.
And it's one of your most engaged with things because of it. So definitely that it's working. Definitely want to extend our gratitude to Sarah, Bridget, Mel for being here and really opening and sharing a little bit of the behind the scenes for your institutions. If anyone joining or watching wants to learn more, we have a pretty regular learning series. This is open to anyone who is interested about parent engagement. Sometimes it's going to be more tactical about campus CSP. So how do you use the system to accomplish a really specific goal? Or other times later this month, it will talk about all of the new features that were rolled out just on Tuesday. So lots to learn there. We have a really great newsletter curated by the one and only Mel, but it really highlights the reasons and importance for parent engagement in the entire educational landscape. So looking at that higher ed lens, finding different ways to engage parents across the institution, not just for our enrollment teams, but really at a high level. And then if anyone's interested, we have our demo page here to learn more and book a demo with us. So again, cannot thank Sarah, Bridget, myself enough, but have our contact info here. We'll make sure to get you this recording and appreciate everyone taking an hour and a minute out of their days to join us.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.